Hey everyone, thanks for joining today as we go through our webinar on 5 game-changing tips for smarter financial planning with our friends here from Prophix. So if we move on, my name is Steve Engel. I'm the ISV and Alliances Manager, and I'm joined today by John Subak from Prophix. John, hi, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having us.
No problem. So as we move in here, we're going to go through our 5 game-changing tips for smarter financial planning. Just a quick reminder, everyone is on mute today. If you have any questions, please feel free to put those in the Q&A section on the GoToWebinar platform. All right, so let's jump in with our first tip here. So really automate and eliminate spreadsheet errors. So the biggest risk, in relying on spreadsheet for budgeting is those human inefficiency and errors. I know one stat that's out there is 70% of finance teams still rely on those manual processes, which leads to inefficiencies. So John, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit, how does Prophix help finance teams move beyond spreadsheets?
Yeah, that's a great question there, Steve. And it really boils down to being able to go ahead and integrate directly with the customer's core solution. So this could be their ERP system. They may have a CRM system, a payroll system. They have all these different systems that are basically housing and storing data. What we essentially do is integrate directly into those. We bring that information into a central location. Security blankets the entire product, so you can actually go ahead and have different users within the application that are looking at information that's all centralized. You can leverage all that information from an insight standpoint to keep a close pulse on your organization. And it really, boils down to eliminating human error. Like even the smallest mistake in a formula, cell reference, a copy and paste action can throw off an entire report or budget. And to your point, studies show that nearly 70 to 80% of spreadsheets contain errors, and most of them go undetected. And in addition to that, version control is something that a lot of organizations struggle with at the end of the day. So they might have, 3 different, 4 different, 5 different, 10 different iterations of a budget that's floating around. It's hard to track who updated what and when. And it's easy to work off of outdated and incorrect numbers and values.
Oh, yeah, that's def definitely a problem there. So those risks then, is there some tangible numbers you've seen around kind of what those kind of look like for people and you know what they can do?
Yeah, it really boils down to bringing all that information into one central location. We try to automate as much as possible. So you can actually go ahead and automate the import of the data, right? And for some customers, that means overnight. Others, it's a couple times throughout the day. They can run it on demand as well. But what they're doing is everybody that's within Profix is looking at the exact same information, like the exact values. It's one source of truth. You're basically connecting to separate systems, harnessing all that information in a central location to provide the organization with valuable insight. And that then can be leveraged for dashboarding purposes. It could be utilized in reports, financial statements, and then taking a look at the organization through the forward-looking lens and doing forecasting and what-if scenario planning.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so I think you doing that scenario planning, I think outside of Excel and Profix probably is moving beyond those spreadsheets. Is definitely key. So if we move on sort of our tip 2 then, so if we're going to improve forecasting accuracy using AI to do some of that scenario planning. AI is a hot topic, so really, how does AI in Profix improve that forecasting accuracy?
Yeah, when you think about it, at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're centralizing, we're connecting all those different data sets. And instead of really having scattered spreadsheets across different departments, Profix pulls all the financial and operational data into one platform. And this means that everybody, once again, is looking at the same numbers. It's live, it's accurate, it's up to date. And then, you can automate core processes and drive collaboration. So tasks like budgeting, forecasting, reporting, consolidations, can all be automated. There's no more copying and pasting of formulas or manually rolling up numbers. Profix handles it all, really saving time and reducing the amount of errors. And then from a collaboration standpoint, Profix allows users across the organization to input directly with clear workflows along with approval processes and paths. So you can track changes, you can assign tasks, and it really ensures accountability without having to go ahead and email 38 different versions of a template or a report back and forth.
Yeah, that's definitely key, and I've seen those scenarios play out before. So that's great. Yeah, and just looking at the little dashboard here, I mean, it looks super intuitive and easy to use, which is fantastic. So then I wonder, can you share an example of that scenario planning and how it's kind of help the company navigate what that uncertainty can look like?
Yeah, there's two different aspects of that. Obviously, we have our predictive forecasting that is based off of the AI functionality within Prophix, but you just can actually go ahead and run what if scenarios utilizing the what if process within Prophix. And I'd say every single organization, probably over the past 5 years, really with the onset of COVID, have done some pretty substantial modeling. Organizations were dealing with supply shortages back in 2019. They had issues procuring parts and products. Fast forward a couple of years, there was a labor crisis, and it was difficult to hire and retain talent. And then, if you turn on the TV nowadays, all the talks around tariffs and the impacts on tariffs. So being able to go ahead and leverage the AI functionality, which basically takes a look at all the historical data and factors in actuals as well, it allows you to pick up trends and anomalies rather quickly in order to go ahead and provide that forward-looking lens on the fly. A number of our customers are playing around right now with, what happens if, tariffs get imposed, and what does that mean from, a sales standpoint? What does that mean from a cost standpoint? I read an article where right before the tariffs were announced, Apple had shipped $600 million worth of iPhones to the US to avoid the impact of the tariffs on it. So somebody was obviously behind the scenes modeling out different scenarios, and we have a number of customers that are doing the exact same thing. And I think we have a slide that shows one of the examples here coming up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, if you could maybe just talk to us about one of those customers, that's not Apple, that's not the, a mega trillion-dollar company.
Yeah, Boulay has been a longtime customer of Prophix, and they use the product in a number of different ways. Some of the proof points that they received is they were able to go ahead and reforecast more frequently since we tap directly into their ERP. We pull in that information into a model. Then they could go ahead and do instead of an annual plan, you could go down to a monthly or quarterly reforecast, which as you can see, improve the overall accuracy. Also, through the automation capability, it actually speeds up the timeliness. So there's less mundane activities that are associated with putting together the budget or forecast. They don't have to worry about extracting those data sets, dropping it into an Excel file, parsing it out, attaching it to Outlook, having end users provide inputs and comments, have them send that back, and then aggregate all that. Profix handles all that, and then that translates to overall better accurate actuals to budget or actuals to forecast, and it allows them to be proactive rather than reactive when playing around with different levers to model out different assumptions.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I think, we talked a little bit about some of the automation stuff, you touched on the AI there. But at the end of the day, there's still people involved in this process for now. So we move on to tip three here, increasing that collaboration between finance and the operations. So why is that cross-department collaboration still so important in financial planning?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. And I think it really boils down to having a more accurate and realistic budget or plan. Cross-departmental collaboration is really crucial in financial planning because it turns it from a siloed activity to one that is company-wide and aligns better to the overall strategy. Also, early visibility into risks and operations, collaborative planning really surfaces potential issues early, so finance can build contingency plans and help the business pivot and transfer in a much faster manner. And then improved accountability, I would say, is another key point there. When budget owners are involved in setting their targets, they're more invested in delivering on them. So in turn, planning becomes a shared responsibility and not just a finance activity.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So then how does Profix really go through and help improve that collaboration between finance and the other business leaders?
Yeah, so the nice part about Prophix is that there's complete workflow functionality built into the tool. So within Prophix, you could wrap in a workflow around, say, your annual budget process, your month-end close, your monthly forecast, where Prophix can essentially go ahead and kick out templates and reports to those key stakeholders. They could provide input directly into the template or report through the web-based interface. They don't need to know how. They don't have to know how to learn, or to utilize Excel. They don't have to know anything about pivot tables, VLOOKUP. So there's no Excel experience that's required. Input is extremely easy and user friendly at the end of the day. And once again, it allows you to get the buy-ins from business leaders that are really close to the operations side of things.
Yeah, that's great. The usability is key, and I think you had here another kind of real world example of a client that was realizing those benefits. So whenever you talk a little bit about Encore Electric here.
Yeah, Encore is another one of our great customers, and they had a number of different wins right out of the gate. From improvement in the time savings, to improving operational statistics as well. So it allowed a lot of our customers to sort of shift from doing everything manually, which is time consuming and mundane, whereby it allowed them to focus on the value add, which was the deeper analysis. So, for organizations that take 2 weeks to close their books, there's others that it takes now a day or two, and that allows them to be a lot more strategic, right? They could go ahead and play around with pricing, or they could source products in a more timely manner, thereby improving overall operating margin.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that really kind of dovetails nicely into tip four here, which is getting those real-time insights to make faster decisions. So, I mean, you alluded to this a little bit before, but I mean, what are some of the biggest benefits of real-time financial reporting?
Yeah, I mean, it allows you to be agile, allows you to be proactive than reactive. It allows you to drive your organization, from the front seat rather than the rear view mirror. If you think about it, if you don't have a tool that's directly integrated into your core data systems, right? What you're doing is relying on static reports that might be produced, weekly, in some cases monthly, some days, in some cases it's, 15 days into the next month. But essentially what a CPM tool like Prophix does, it allows you to harness that information in one central location, allows you to take a holistic view of everything from the financial to the operational sides to come up with that cohesive message of exactly what's going on within your organization.
Yeah, fantastic. And I know there's a lot of finance people out there that, they get those requests that come in. I need to, this analysis, by the end of the day. So how does Profix help those finance team access up-to-date insights?
Yeah, so everybody loves dashboards. A great way to harness all that insight is within a fully interactive dashboard. We do have AI that's layered across that aspect of the product as well. You could actually, I'm going to show it to you in just a second here, but you could have Prophix basically provide you descriptions and commentary of what's going on within data sets. So it makes it really easy, really intuitive for anybody within the organization to get up to speed on exactly what's going on. Also, from a forecasting standpoint, once again, you have your actuals, you have your budget, you can easily compare and contrast and go ahead and create different versions or different scenarios where you could play around with those different levers on the fly. So a lot of our customers, tell us that, once they moved on to Prophix, it really gave them their nights and their weekends back. Somebody could come to them on, a Friday at 4:30 and say, hey, what happens if, sales go up for this particular product? They could easily go ahead and run that what if scenario on the fly within Prophix, and within 2 seconds have a new scenario built out.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, just yeah, fantastic. So before we kind of jump into the demo, kind of our fifth tip here, strengthening compliance and audit readiness. I think audits are probably every accountant's, favorite part of the job. So, John, if you could talk to us a little bit about what are those compliance challenges that finance teams do face today?
Yeah, I think it really boils down to a lot of the reconciling that needs to take place. And the nice part about Prophix is that we have various applications to help with those core issues. So we have an account recs application. We have intercompany management for organizations that need to tag, values between trading partners. For some, it's consolidated reporting where they have multiple entities that are reporting in different currencies that have different ownership assumptions. We could take that all into account and, have all that information within a central location.
Great. And then when it does come to those audits or the regulatory reporting requirements, how does Prophix simplify that process?
Yeah, once again, the nice part is that the reporting becomes dynamic. We're importing that information on a scheduled basis. The reconciliation aspect ensures that the values tie out, which thereby auditors can rely on the financial statements. Everything has an audit history within Prophix. And really what that boils down to is less testing that needs to be done by the auditors, thereby for the customer reducing the costs that are associated with their audit.
Anything you can do to reduce the audit costs, make that life easier, definitely is a huge win. So now we got some time if we jump into the demo here. So let me just go ahead, John, and I will make you the presenter. And if you can just give us, a little taste of what the Prophix solution can do.
Sounds good. Let me go ahead and steal the controls. Let me switch my screens up here. Bear with me one sec, Steve.
No problem.
If you can let me know if the screen changes on your.
We can see the dashboard. It looks great.
Awesome. So yeah, as Stephen mentioned, what I'll go ahead and do is spend the next 5 to 10 minutes just giving you sort of that bird's eye view of Prophix. Prophix is a web-based application, so in terms of gaining access as an end user, you could leverage any of your favorite web browsers, so Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, Safari, all pretty common ones. We do support single sign-on, so it allows users to pass through their login credentials. Alternatively, you can actually access Prophix via username and password. Now, since Prophix is web-based, users can actually go ahead and pull it up on their smartphone, their tablet, their laptop. As long as you have that internet connection, once again, you could dive into the tool, and it is responsive to the landscape of your device. So if you go ahead and open up Prophix on your smartphone, for example, it's going to fit the screen accordingly. Okay. A couple things to point out. Since Prophix as a product is a platform, there's various types of applications, and users would actually access Prophix via the portal. And once in the portal, you notice that they have the ability to jump into their account rec product, the financial consolidations, if that's something that they're using, FP&A, we have lease accounting. But once again, everything within Prophix has the exact same look and feel, and that really speaks to the reason why Prophix has such quick and high user adoption. So here's an example of the FP&A application. The one thing that I do want to point out, and this is really a huge benefit, is the ability to go ahead and integrate into any source system. So this could be the ERP. So think of this as Sage Intacct, Sage 300, Sage X3, any flavor of Sage. But we also have the ability to go ahead and pull in data from other systems, such as your payroll system, your CRM system, your inventory management system, your grant system if you're a not-for-profit. And once again, bring all that information into one central location. Once you have it within a model, as you can see, you could go ahead and utilize it in a number of different ways. A lot of our customers tend to go ahead and build out dashboards where they're tracking specific information in different types of KPIs. So notice we could track revenue, we could track margins, for example. We could track and keep a close eye on capital expenditures. Once again, as long as the data is pulled into a model within Prophix, you could go ahead and surface it in a number of different means here. So as mentioned earlier, Prophix does leverage off of AI functionality. As a user, they could click on the little information icon, and Prophix will go ahead and provide a brief description as to what's going on behind that data set. In addition to that, everything's fully interactive. So for example, let's say, Steve, you're taking a look at your operations group or department. You can see that there's some pressure coming from that group. You can click anywhere on the chart, and Prophix will actually go ahead and drill down into your data set. Really what we're doing at the end of the day is we're mirroring the hierarchy or the departmental and account structure that's set up within your core system in Prophix. And by doing so, it provides this inherent drill down functionality. So in my example, we could see a majority of the pressures coming from engineering. What's really neat is we can actually right click, select the little link, and Prophix will go ahead and surface any type of report that's linked to that visual. Okay. Now, on the reporting side, reports in terms of look and feel is totally up to the customer. So charts, logos, graphs can all be included. You can include a section for commentary. But the best part, and this helps to streamline reporting, is that when you format that one report, it could then be leveraged across the entire organization. So users will have access to these drop downs or these pick lists. They can make a selection and Prophix will render the data that's associated with it. So once again, security blankets this aspect of the product as well. So you could go ahead and roll this out to all of the department managers, and they will only be able to see the information that's relates to their particular department. Now, if users want to further slice and dice their data, what's really neat, off of any report within Prophix, they can actually right-click, select, analyze. Prophix will actually go ahead and strip away the formatting of the report and bring them into what we call ad hoc analysis here. And the best way to describe it, to provide everybody some context, is that it's similar to have a pivot table. However, your end users won't have to worry about pulling data out of Sage, dropping it into an Excel workbook, overlaying a pivot table on top of that. In our example, if we want to drill down into our travel variance, we could simply hit this little plus icon. And once again, Prophix is going to go ahead and drill down into that hierarchy. Okay. What's also pretty neat as well, once you've identified where your variance is coming from, you might have questions with respect to what department, what cost center, what entity is driving this variance. And what users can actually do is come over here to the pages section, grab any of the items within the pages section, drop it into the canvas, and Prophix will swap the two out. All right. Maybe they want to take a look at their monthly actuals. They could grab months, drop it within the actuals column. Once again, everything you do from the end user standpoint within Prophix is point, click, drag, drop. So no need to worry about programming or coding or anything like that. Ease of use is obviously super, super important. And as you can see, navigating Prophix is really intuitive. You could always toggle back. And then really the benefit of being able to go ahead and hook up right into your core system is the ability to go ahead and drill across to the underlying transactions. So if you want to take a look at what makes up a particular balance, users can actually right click. Prophix will go ahead and pull up and surface the underlying transactions that make up that balance. This is where we work with the customer to identify the fields that they want to bring in. So for example, account, department, month, the value, we could actually filter on all this. And if you actually utilize image systems for invoices, receipts, purchase orders, that's able to go ahead and generate a URL within our drill across capability, you can actually include the hyperlink to actually get down to that level of detail without ever leaving Prophix. All right, so let me close out of there real quick. Really, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is really empower end users with this, what we like to call a guided approach to analyzing their own data. They log in, they have their own dashboard set up with information that's relevant to their particular role. They could drill up, drill down into the data. If that doesn't answer their question, you could sort of guide them to a formal style report. If they want to go ahead and further analyze their data, literally they could jump into ad hoc and be down to the transactional level detail within a click. And then from the executive standpoint, so for executives that are really in tune with what's going on within their department, their group, their entity, if they identify a variance right off of their dashboard, they could be a single click away of harnessing that insight. Once again, here they could filter on this information. And in our example today, you notice that there's a $15,000 charge. If this is a variance that pops up, it could be due to timing. It may have been booked to the wrong department, the wrong cost center, but allows them to, once again, be proactive rather than waiting to the results are in come month end and, looking at reports that are dated. This allows them to go ahead and make the updates and changes or answer questions on the fly. Switching gears here real quick, I'm going to spend just 2 minutes here on the budgeting side of things. So we have a number of customers that leverage Prophix for their planning needs. What's nice is that they actually can leverage the workflow functionality to drive that collaboration and accountability. So in my example, if we turn our attention to the left-hand side here, there's a section called My Tasks. This is where a user would come in and identify anything that they're responsible for completing. So some users may have a handful of tasks, some may have one or two. That really depends in terms of how involved they are with the overall process. What's really nice is that if they click on the 3 dots, hit the little rocket ship, Prophix pulls up this one page where they could identify anything that they currently have on the go. Anything that they miss will show up within the overdue section. And as they go ahead and complete items, it'll actually show up within the completed area. So now, rather than having to go back and forth through their inbox and read through emails, once again, it makes it a really, really easy for them to identify what they need to go ahead and complete and work on. Then from an input and template standpoint, the look and feel I always stress is totally up to the customer. So colors, logos, font styles, that is totally up to them. The best part is that you could streamline your overall budgeting process by coming up with a couple different input templates. Users can enter in values directly into the cells. Users can adjust data if need be. They could even spread data as well. And then once the data is stored within Prophix, you can actually go ahead and roll it over the upcoming year. And this is a great way to pre-populate the template rather than forcing users to do a bottom-up build. So there's a lot of functionality with respect to inputs, commentary, spreading that's available to users as well. And as mentioned, I always stress look and feel is totally up to the end users. So you could pull in your prior actuals, you could bring in your September outlook, you could leverage that as a jump off point. And then, even if you want to do long range planning, you could go ahead and plan the current year at the monthly level. You could include a couple columns to plan at the annual level for the next 2, 3, 5 years out if you choose to. So templates are totally configurable. Then the last thing that I want to point out here, we have a number of customers that leverage Prophix for personnel planning as well. So if your organization, uses ADP, Paylocity, Altipro, we can actually harness all that personnel data, bring it into a model within Prophix to allow you to do all of your headcount planning. So really, at the end of the day, it boils down to having one area where you can actually add people, remove people. You could update their payroll-related information. You could have, adjustments applied at the macro level. You can make adjustments at the employee level, right? Simply select the employee. If somebody's getting promoted, you could change their title. You can adjust their compensation. If your organization offers various types of benefits, whether it be health, dental, vision, a retirement component, that can all be factored in from a planning standpoint. And then lastly, keep in mind, this is all tied into the workflow. So somebody could be responsible for putting together the first pass. Steve, you might be the approver, in which case when I go ahead and submit, you'd receive an email with a link to this template. You could approve it, you could reject it. We can even have back and forth commentary between the two of us as well. And then, from an aggregation standpoint, Prophix is constantly aggregating and summarizing the data. So there's no linking of tabs, spreadsheets, or workbooks or anything like that anymore. All right.
That's amazing, John. I love just how user friendly the system is. I think regardless of whatever technology you employ, if the user adoption isn't there, it's not going to be a success. And I imagine the adoption rate for Prophix is I'm sure through the roof.
That's exactly it. I
So
mean, that's really paramount at the end of the day. It's no different than when you download an app on your phone and, if it doesn't work or you don't like the look and feel of it within, 2 minutes, you'll go ahead and delete it and try something else. But we try to keep things as simplistic as possible. Everything, as you saw, was point, click, drag, drop. You can enter in values just using your keyboard, and that really speaks to
yeah,
the reason why, as you mentioned, Prophix has such quick and high user adoption. There's nothing that they need to learn.
yeah. I wonder if there's one other thing maybe you could just talk us through a little bit is Prophix One.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. From a product standpoint, I think I mentioned it before. Prophix is a platform really geared towards driving efficiencies within the office of the CFO. So this is really all things finance and accounting. Within this visual, it really breaks it down into the 4 core products. We have our consolidation and close product, and within that, we have our account reconciliation application, intercompany management, along with financial consolidated reporting. Under accounting and compliance, we have a number of customers that leverage Prophix for lease accounting or disclosure management. And then really native to the product since day one was the reporting analytics and the FP&A portions of it. So once again, we have customers that leverage Prophix for financial statements, their board packages, to do ad hoc slicing and dicing, to harness all that information from a visual standpoint within dashboards. And then on the planning side, it's a modeling tool at the end of the day. So this could be, modeling out OPEX, personnel, revenue, inventory, anything at the end of the day can be modeled directly within Prophix. And I'd say the latest application that we released at the beginning of the year was called Integrated Business Planning. And this is really geared towards organizations that have extremely large data volumes and extremely complex calculations. So, some manufacturers want to go ahead and plan down to the SKU level, and they have tens of thousands of SKUs. We're the only product in the mid-market that can really accommodate that level of detail with no performance issues. And then, from a platform standpoint, what's really nice is, as you saw, there's a common look and theme. It also boils down to one integration, one vendor that you're dealing with to solve different pain points. You could go ahead and roll out whatever you want. If you just want to leverage account reconciliations, you could do that within Prophix. So number of different applications geared towards different pain points and challenges. Security blankets the entire product as well. And then we try to automate and drive collaboration utilizing the workflow functionality.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thanks for showing us everything that Prophix has there. So
My
now,
pleasure.
I'd just like to open it up to the audience. If there are any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat window, and we will get to those. So let's give that a minute. I think there's one here that we've seen, with a lot of the webinars we do is, how long does it typically take to do implementation?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And the nice thing about Prophix is that it's a product at the end of the day. It's nothing that needs to be built ground up. And therefore, typical implementation takes anywhere, depending upon the scope, in the range of 20 to 30 days. We realize that people have their day jobs, so they probably can't commit 100% of the time, in which case we roll out that project over, 6 to 8 weeks, for example. It's probably a good ballpark.
Okay, still pretty quick there. Okay, there's one other question here. Prophix looks really easy to use. Do end users need to know or be good at Excel?
Yeah, that's another great question as well. And that was really the whole purpose of the way the solution was designed. It really is a tool that's owned by finance for finance. So no, you do not need to be good at Excel. As you can see, as an end user to navigate is just using your mouse and point, clicking, dragging, and dropping, and then filtering through easy to use drop down menus.
Ah, fantastic. So no Excel training courses required then. So that's
No, obviously
fantastic.
it's a benefit. Like everybody's familiar with Excel, and therefore we try to keep it along the same theme and consistency. Um, Once again, but no, it's not required.
Okay. We've one other question here. Um, and I think you touched on this a little bit. Besides our ERP system, can Prophix integrate to other source systems?
Yeah, and I'd say that's a huge advantage. Being able to harness all that data that resides within different, separate systems across the organization. So we have customers that pull in data not only from their ERP, but their CRM system like Salesforce, for example, their payroll system like ADP, Paylocity, UltiPro, grant management systems like Razor's Edge, for example, inventory management systems. At the end of the day, as long as we can gain access to the data, we can actually pull it into Prophix, and we do so by APIs, by ODBC, or even flat file integrations as well.
Okay, fantastic. Um, doesn't look like we have any other questions. Um, so I'd like to, thank everyone for joining us today. Thanks, John, for sharing your knowledge and for giving us a little tour of Profix there. I would invite anyone, come see Profix. They'll be at Bass Connect, May 27th in Toronto. So definitely feel free to come out, meet John in person, see things, learn a lot more about what Profix can do. If you want more information, you can visit the Bass website, send us an email at marketing@bass.com, or you can reach out to your Bass account manager and they'll be happy to connect you with the team at Prophix. So once again, everyone, thanks for joining and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, everyone.